Welcome back to the Coffee Bar. Appreciate you joining us. It's your boy A5 Cup of Coffee, your favorite bartender. And today we have a doozy, one that definitely I enjoyed watching for you all. It's the Umbrella Academy 2. We're going to be doing a sipping review of the Umbrella Academy 2, and we are going to go ahead and kick this thing off. Let's go ahead and get our drink started. The drink is going to be called the Dark Mai Tai, aka the Sparrow. If you know, you know. Watch the show and you'll get it. But actually, we're gonna also be doing it in a fishbowl, which is another nod to the show. Again, if you know, you know. Watch the show. So let's go ahead and get our fishbowl ready. I actually pre-did this one. It has the lemons, limes, and oranges looking like the little umbrella. So it's actually 7 in here. So again, another nod to the show here. Go ahead and put your ice in there. So we're gonna need very little ice. We're gonna get our shaker ready. And we're gonna put about 2 to 3 ounces of pineapple juice. And we are going to be putting in 2 ounces of orange juice. Normally what Mai Tai has in it. And then we're gonna use some spice rum, which is normal. And we're gonna add a little bit of grenadine in here as well, which is where we're gonna actually get to, after this, we're gonna actually kind of deviate from the normal. Just a little bit of grenadine. Barely even half an ounce. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the differences here. We're gonna actually, instead of adding coconut rum, we're gonna actually add Bacardi Black. It's 1.5 ounces. Perfect. And we're gonna add Malibu Black. There we go. Malibu Black. It's a little bit stronger rum than normal Malibu. And now, where's my shaker top? There we go. Add a shaker top to it. Now what we want to do is add just a tad bit more orange juice after the mix. Just a tad bit more. Pour to fill. And we have, ladies and gentlemen, the Dark Mai Tai, aka the Sparrow. Watch to the end to see how we change this into a different color. But I know you're gonna enjoy the drink itself. Yes, 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 yes. So, let's get into this season 2 breakdown, man. Okay, so, of course, last season, the Umbrella Academy effectively failed at stopping the apocalypse. So they had to jump back. They had to jump in time. They were trying to go back so they could have another chance at it. They brought Vanya with them, which was the cause of the apocalypse. And while they're going back, they end up going back to the 60s. And each character is in a different year, which is actually pretty cool. And basically, one of the highlights of this is they get back to the 60s and the apocalypse is happening again, so it basically follows them, which is so crazy. It's absolutely awesome and crazy, and you're thinking, okay, it's the same premise, this is going to be boring, but the way they do things with the same beat the clock to the end of the world, they did it a lot differently, and I definitely enjoyed season 2 more than I did season 1, and I like season 1, but season 2 I definitely enjoyed a lot more. So we definitely have everybody kind of going through their own thing, since they're at this point everyone is by themselves and split up, with the exception of Klaus and Ben, which we figured out now at the end of season 1 that Klaus has been talking to their dead brother Ben pretty much the entire time. So they're back in time, and I'm going to start off pretty much chronologically as far as, number 1 through 7. I'm going to save 5 for last. So number 1, Luther, he is back in the 60s, and he is actually still having his daddy issues, unfortunately. He's actually the first one to meet their father in the past. So yeah, they actually get to meet their father in the past, which is a pretty big highlight. So yeah, they actually, he meets him, and his dad basically tears him a new one. And so he turns to this gangster that he works for, and basically that's his newfound dad. And you can kind of tell there's an event that happens between him and Allison. I'll explain that at Allison's portion, where, Luther's pretty sad about it, and Luther effectively loses a fight, and he turns his back on him too. So now he's kind of searching for himself without a father figure. Now number 2, Diego, he lands, and he's in the 60s, and of course they all are, and this is around the time that John F. Kennedy got shot. So he realizes what time period he's in, and he's obsessed with stopping JFK from getting shot, and it's to the point where they put him in the crazy house. Like, he's stalking, he's actually stalking the guy who shoots JFK. So it's actually pretty crazy that he's actually stalking him, and he ends up in the crazy house with Lala, who's actually a new character, and she's gonna be more important down the line as well. So that's number 2. Number 3, which is Allison, she actually, of course, at the end of last season, she's actually her throat is actually cut, and she is not able to use her power. So she's in the 60s, which is not a great era for black people at this point. They're definitely not too kind, and she runs right into conflict as soon as she lands. She's actually being chased by a few white guys, and she ends up in a beauty parlor, which is where she ends up working or whatnot. I think Umbrella Academy as a series, the showrunners and everything handled this very well. They didn't shy away from it, and then they handled it very tastefully. She meets her husband Ray, who's gonna be a little important. They are civil rights activists, and it's actually pretty cool how they acted out. So that's going on with Allison, and actually Luther finding out Allison is married later on in the season is what actually gets him losing the fight, and him falling out with his other father figure. So that's what's happening with them now. So no, you got number 4, which is Klaus, and number 6, which is Ben. Klaus lands, and he ends up being a cult leader. So, the way they have his haircut and everything, it's actually pretty funny because they have him, in the prophet type hair and everything like that. It's kind of mimicking or a nod to, what we see on the paintings, as Jesus. So it's actually really funny, and Ben is actually reluctantly helping him, because at the end of the season, we see that Klaus is unlocking his level 2 of his powers, where he is able to actually interact physically, and Ben is actually able to interact physically through Klaus with the real world instead of just being a ghost. So there's this one scene where he's actually lifting Klaus up, making everybody believe he's floating as a prophet and everything. It's absolutely hilarious, their interactions. And actually, you would think that Ben wouldn't have his own little arc in there, but he actually does. He has his own arc, and I'll explain a little bit later how that comes to an end. But I actually like the fact that, you know, even though he was attached to Klaus pretty much the whole time, he had his own emotions, feelings, and everything outside of Klaus, and that was pretty cool too. Now, number 7, Vanya, she lands. Of course, she's the cause of the apocalypse and everything, and you know she's having her self-regret, but she gets hit with a car right off the bat, and so it makes her lose her memory, and she grows a bond with the family who actually hit her, the wife, the son, especially, and the husband. She forms a bond with that farm family, and she forgets the past, or she's forgotten the past, so she's basically gets a new start where she is, and we'll find out later, you know, there's more so cause for that. It's more so a choice than her actually having amnesia. Now, number 5, that's one of my favorite characters. Him and Diego are, which number 2, are my favorite characters out of this whole thing. But number 5, of course, he shot back, and this is where we start hitting the highlights. Number 5 actually is let known by Hazel. Hazel, there's an older version of Hazel, and one of the highlights or WTF moments is, you know, we find out that Hazel actually ended the series with season 1 with a really happy ending. He actually was able to spend 20 years with his girlfriend that they found at the coffee shop in season 1, but unfortunately she died of cancer, and he actually dies giving 5 information. He actually gives him a briefcase, which unfortunately gets shot. And he's trying to tell him, hey, you got to get back to the past because, hey, this is what happens when you all came to this timeline. And that's the apocalypse that actually happened. So, you know, Hazel basically saves 5 and in turn saves the 7. So, and 5 is, of course, at the end of the day, trying to get everybody back together. He has to do it and get everybody back together because he's blaming himself because he botched time travel again. So he's kind of blaming himself. Now, I definitely want to get into the minor characters and the antagonists of this season. They were all actually really wonderful in the season, but let's take a sip. That is good. So you have the 3. You have the 3 brothers with the white hair. They're actually pretty awesome, and man, they are basically hunting the 7 the entire time, especially 5 at first, and they are trying to put an end. They're trying to put an end to them because they're basically messing up the timeline. So they are definitely from the company that maintains the timeline, and they're pretty interesting. And then you have this guy Elliot, who actually saw everybody land, who actually ends up helping Diego and 5 and kind of getting everybody back together. Now, unfortunately, things don't end too well for him, but he has a nice little part in everything, and I kind of liked his character. He definitely added to. You have Ray, of course, which we discussed earlier, which is Allison's husband, and he's a civil rights activist in Dallas, and you know, Allison actually takes a kin to him, and of course they get married, and he actually really, I liked his character a lot as well. He didn't add much to the plot overall, but he did add to Allison's arc, so you know, I definitely liked him. You actually even had Klaus interacting with a young Dave, which is his love interest in the first season, trying to keep him from joining the war, trying to save his life, and it was okay. It was kind of showing, you know, how you can be confused in life and things like that. And I like the way, again, Umbrella Academy handled it tastefully. It's not pushed in your face, but at the same time, it's like letting you know, hey, you know, these types of relationships were definitely not, you know, everyone's forte at the time. So, you know, Dave trying to handle the feelings that he has as far as being gay, and then Klaus trying to save his life. So that was awesome as well. And then we come to Lila, which is the handler's daughter, and I want to say that she's a side character, but the way they kind of invested in her, it was more of she was one of the main characters. And you find out, she is, she's basically kidnapped by the handler, and you really don't know why. They actually sprinkle that foreshadowing in the beginning of the season. And man, Lila kind of infiltrates the Seven by being friends with Diego while he's in the insane asylum, and actually helps him escape, as a matter of fact. And then she tries to defend Five, but Five is he's just so far ahead of his time, because of course he's actually 58, so he doesn't trust anybody, and he notices things right off the bat. And she's one of the things he notices. But actually her arc in the entire series is actually really awesome as well. She's a good fighter, and we come to find out a few more things about her a little bit later. And so and then of course we have the handler, who actually is crazy enough shot in the beginning of the season, shot in the head, as a matter of fact, but she ends up living through it. And she unfortunately she gets demoted, and so she has this whole scheme in order to make herself back on top, and it's crazy, and we'll discuss that a little bit later in some of our highlights. But yeah, she's back, and she's the main antagonist in this one, though. She's the main person that's after the Seven the entire time, or manipulating things to go her way. So we have all of that going on, and like I said, the side characters definitely added to the depth of the show, in my opinion. So that's pretty much the sum of what everybody's going through and everything. I definitely want to go ahead and start hitting the highlights here. And and I guess what I would call the WTF moments of what's going on in the series. So right now, this is a time where you want to go ahead and stop, because there are going to be mild and major spoilers from here going forward. I kind of want to discuss a few details, but not keep you here too long. So, big thing number one, and this is no particular order, but big thing number one is when Allison reveals her powers. Now, the entire time, of course, when she lands, her neck is still healing and whatnot, so she doesn't have any use of it. But man, the entire time through the civil rights, which, like I said, it's handled very well, because she doesn't use her powers through any of the sit-ins or trying to influence anybody or anything like that. She completely downplays her powers, which I absolutely like, because it's not anything where she did special per se outside of participating. She didn't do anything to influence anything in the past, and I absolutely love that about how they made that character. And she didn't want to gain anything like she had done previously, where she gained her her fame and everything by using her powers. Now, I also want to talk about when she revealed her powers, how she told her husband, and he was afraid that maybe she had rumored him, and she never did, of course, but he was definitely afraid at first, afterwards, and then she kind of showed him why she hadn't used them. And I think there was I personally believe there was a level 2 unlock to her powers in a certain scene, and this is where she's in the coffee shop where they had sat in before, and it ended up being a riot. It went the wrong way, and she goes to the guy. She was like, "I heard a rumor that you made me some coffee." And so after that, after she had told him the initial order, normally she doesn't say anything else, but at this point, she said, "I heard a rumor that you shut your mouth." That's how she started. My apologies. She started, "I heard a rumor that you shut your mouth," and he couldn't speak. And then she was like, "I would like some coffee," and he did it. And then she kept saying more, and it was burning the guy's hand because earlier he had spilled coffee on her on purpose. and that's what kind of incited the riot. But yeah, I mean, that part right there, I believe that she has, like I said, unlocked the level 2, where maybe she doesn't have to say, I heard a rumor, once she's gotten you under her control. And because before it seemed like she only gave one order, and that was the end. Once that order was carried out, that was the end of it. She was broken. But he kept going through. But you kind of seen how she was kind of losing control as well with her emotions. So I think that was her level 2 unlock. But that was, like I said, it was actually really cool as well. Now, highlight number 2, which was actually pretty cool, was Ben actually possesses Klaus. And this is absolutely hilarious because, like I told you, Ben had his own arc and he had his own love interest, and he actually possesses Klaus to kind of feel what it's like to be alive again. And before this, we didn't know that Klaus could interact like he did, and Klaus actually did unlock a level, what I would call a level 2, and possibly even a level 3, because he can actually control Ben's powers through himself, where the tentacles come out and it's physically hurting everybody else. And so he can, not only can he do that, but in the beginning they actually showed where he made ghosts go and attack soldiers. So he actually can have the ghosts physically interact with him and other people instead of just speaking to them and conjuring them. So his powers are actually getting cooler and cooler throughout the series, and I can't wait to season 3 to see what happens with his powers as well, because he's actually growing up a lot. You know, he definitely is growing a lot, and I like I said, I like his character arc as well. So yeah, being possessing Klaus was actually pretty cool as well. Highlight number 3, I would have to say, was really interesting, where they meet with their dad in the past, and he basically calls a little, he notices that they're following him or whatnot, and he calls a little meeting with them. And I already told you that he tore Luther a new one, and in this meeting, man, he tears number 2 Diego to ribbons, man. The way he speaks to them sometimes is just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. But he basically told him he was insignificant, and he was trying to prove that he was a hero in a world that doesn't need him. And you notice from season 1, whenever Diego is put in a certain position where he feels like a child again, he starts to stutter like he used to. He had a stuttering issue and a speaking issue when he was younger. And he definitely displayed it when his dad broke him down. And like nobody stepped up for him, so he was kind of mad at the group for that. But he had their dad. He definitely was, still himself, But the way he speaks, the way he tells them stuff is really harsh. But he definitely does tell the truth 9 times out of 10. So that's the thing about it, He kind of skewed the thing with Diego, but Diego definitely does have more of a kind of a Batman complex there. And he actually speaks to Five outside of this, and he kind of tells him, hey, guy, you're trying to do too much with this time travel. How about you start off with small increments instead of trying to jump years and days and stuff like that? Why don't we start off with small increments? And Five just kind of waves it off, even though his dad had been right before. His dad told him not to time travel this year. He wasn't ready for it. And that's how we ended up with this whole thing that we got going on right now. But in any case, he gave him some advice. Five, of course, still being Five, a little bit honorary, he just kind of waved it off. But it was definitely laying some groundwork for what will happen later on in the series. Now, another highlight that I like was Five's rampage, and I call this Five's rampage because Five had run out of ideas, and he just really wanted to get his family home. He wanted to stop the apocalypse from happening and them dying. And even though Five is he's just a honorary character, you can tell he really cares about his family. He does a lot for them. And he gives up a lot of himself for his family at the end of the day. And I think that kind of attributes to, because he's the most like their dad. And I think we're going to learn more and more about their dad and how he reacts. And we're going to talk about that here in a few moments as well. But 5, he basically, the handler tells him, hey, I'll give you a briefcase to get back home if you take out the board for me, assassinate the entire board for me. And he was like, how am I supposed to do that? And she gave him the, when and where they were going to meet. And she was like, you do this for me, I give you and your family a way home. So he takes an axe and he goes into the boardroom, and man, it's brutal. Like, you have people hanging from the ceiling, bleeding out. You have a guy getting his head cut into with the axe. And then the main board member is he's in a fish tank he's in a fish head, like bowl on his head, on his shoulders, and he chases him down and busts the fishbowl. So it's crazy. It's crazy to see how 5 really, if he really let loose, what he can do. And man, it was like the Nightcrawler scene in the X-Men X2, but much more brutal. Like he just handled those guys without any issues. So that was definitely a highlight. Another highlight was the guys missing their way home, because even though they got the briefcase, he carried out the task. For one reason or another, only 3 of them ended up being there when it was time. The catch to that suitcase was, hey, you all only have 90 minutes to go ahead and meet together. Now, of course, they weren't together at the time. They had split up. So, man, they went and they they tried to meet all up and everything, and it didn't end up working out. Like, Vanya got kidnapped. So did Diego. He got kidnapped, and man, like, they just didn't make it in time. And 5 was just like pissed. He had to throw the briefcase, and he was pissed. So, which brings us to another highlight: 5 fighting himself. So this is around the time of JFK, and in season 1, they planted an Easter egg that he actually took one of the cases where he had to make sure that John F. Kennedy got assassinated, which was pretty cool that they linked it back to that. So they got to meet older 5 right before he made the jump to season 1, where he ended up being younger 5. So it's actually pretty cool. I know it's a lot of timey-wimey stuff going on. It's worse than the X-Men. But in any case, they want to steal him and Luther try to steal his briefcase, or talk to him to end up giving him, try to talk him into giving the briefcase. And 5 is like fighting himself. So you see them blipping through, and all you can see is Luther just like moving in slow motion, and like they're just blipping through, fighting each other through until they tire each other out. But that was pretty cool. And of course it didn't work. The briefcase, they got it, but it was like only half the briefcase, so they couldn't get back home with that briefcase. So that's so while that's going on, our next highlight was Vanya actually starts to remember. So Vanya, remember, she's gotten hit by this car. She has actually, we find out that she's actually started making this pretty intimate relationship with the wife. She actually has a really close relationship with the son, and the son, she saved him from drowning and somehow passed some of her powers to him, which was interesting in itself. But Vanya, she's basically kidnapped by the FBI, and they are basically trying to say that she's Russian. And of course she knows Russian because her dad had them learn like 7 languages or so a piece. So all of them know different languages, and so she knows Russian. She doesn't know why. So they're saying she's a communist and all of this, and she's a spy. And so they have her like hooked into this electrical, where they're gonna question her and they're basically torturing her. And during this time, this is when you go inside of Vanya's head, and the dad is basically saying, hey, look, you're not remembering because you don't want to remember at this point. And it's absolutely true. And man, once she starts to remember what she's done and starts to feel that hurt again, she flips, and man, you have the FBI on the ceiling, and they're all dead. Like, she basically kills the whole FBI thing, and basically her blowing up the building is what causes. They blame that on the Russians, and that's what causes the apocalypse. This is when we find that out, and it's actually pretty cool because Diego, through a whole bunch of series of events, watched the show, found out that she is the bomb that causes everything. So him, Klaus, and Allison go to try to stop her. And man, it's actually pretty cool. And which brings us to the next highlight, which is Ben saves the day. And because everybody's getting blown back, they're trying to get to Vanya to kind of settle her down. And you're seeing a split screen between her and the little boy. They're experiencing pretty much the same thing, and they don't know why. And the parents don't know why. And so, Vanya is basically just saying, just kind of giving her whole pushback, like I said, her Jean Grey moment. And you're seeing all of this, and Ben's ghost basically is able to get to Vanya, and he basically possesses her in order to get inside her head. And it's actually a pretty good moment of the show. He basically finds her and lets her know, hey, bad things happen to good people. Sometimes people are bad in the world, but just because Dad couldn't handle your anger doesn't mean you can't. And it basically gives Vanya a new outlook on things. And Ben we finally see that Ben is has fulfilled his moment, or has handled his unfinished business. That was his unfinished business. So he starts to fade away, and he asks Vanya to hug him, and this time at least he gets to say goodbye. And they have this sweet moment and whatnot, which was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see him. And Vanya basically gains control over her power finally. So that was definitely a huge highlight and everything. Now, so the next highlight is, so Diego, after all this, he's like, oh man, I can still save JFK, which this kind of leads into the highlight. So he goes to try to save JFK. He thinks this is going to be his day. He sees the guy in the umbrella, and he pushes him down, and JFK is still shot. And the dude has a note that says, I told you so, or whatnot. JFK is shot anyway, which leads into, you see the guys that have been kind of this dark cabal of people, and they meet back up with the Umbrella Academy's dad, and Mr. Hargraves, he walks in, and he's basically like, y'all, I'm not dealing with y'all no more because you promised that he would not be touched. And they was like, well, he was making a lot of people unhappy, which is history tells us, yeah, that's true. But he was kind of telling them, hey, you know what? Guess what? Don't call me for anything else. Don't call me for anything else. And the cabal basically like, man, you're gonna give us your information from here going forward, which basically is the rocket information. They were trying to, beat, it's the code, almost heading into the code where they were trying to beat the Russians to the moon or whatnot. And he was like, you gotta keep giving us your technology. And so this, like I said, this is the highlight where he takes off. I don't know what's going on. I really don't know how to explain it, but he basically takes off his mask or whatnot, and you see the face of Mr. Hargraves on the chair, and you see the back of whatever this is, and all you hear is the sounds, and it's horrifying. All you hear is skin and splatters of blood, and the guy's just yelling painfully. So he basically takes care of the cabal himself. So needless to say, he won't hear back from them. But that was just like a oh my gosh moment. So yeah, that was I definitely like that. And then the last highlight is definitely the end battle, which the end battle was, it had so many things going on, but it was very balanced, and I absolutely loved what ended up happening there. Now again, heavy spoilers. If you wanted to catch some of the highlights, cool. But this is the ending, and it's the end battle of the season. So heavy spoilers once again. So what ends up happening here is long story short, you find out that the reason why the handler kidnapped Lala, and the reason why is because she has powers. And we find out that while she is one of the, I can't say one of the 7, but she's one of the kids that was born on the same day. So she's basically their quote unquote sister, because they call each other brothers and sisters. So she's basically their sister. And man, you find out this because Vanya comes out of the barn because there's like hundreds of like agents coming after them, and you see Diego and Five running, and in order to let Five get into the house, Diego actually shows, I would say, a level 2, or more so, he shows a different way to use his powers. Because it's stated in the beginning, in the season 1, that he can curve objects. It doesn't say necessarily knives. It says he can curve objects, and his weapon of choice is knives. So they start shooting at them, and he jumps out and he stops the bullets and he curves them. So it was more so a different use of his powers, but he normally doesn't use them like that. So I can see how it threw a lot of people off, but it was pretty cool to see him actually use a different way, or basically Neo the bullets away from them. So that was pretty cool. And so Vanya comes out the barn, and she does this huge shockwave, right? And basically decimates all the agents. So their big gun has basically come to their rescue. She's actually good to go or whatnot. And man, dude, the handler and Lala are just standing there like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, well, why are they able to stand like that? And Lala, the handler's like, go get them, honey. And she levitates, and she does the same shockwave. So they find out she can do whatever they can do. And there's like it's crazy because you see Allison tries to rumor her, and man, she rumors her back, and she's like, I heard a rumor you couldn't breathe, or you stopped breathing. And Allison just basically is taken out of the fight just like that. And her and Five have their rematch, because earlier in the season you see her and Five fight, and you see her appearing in different places, but they never actually show her blip. The cool thing about this is they actually start to show her blip, and her and Five are fighting, and this time she gets the upper hand on Five. It's a little bit more personal fight this time around. So she definitely takes Five out this time around. And she's basically mirroring the beginning of the season, because she's like on his neck. And he throws her off, and he basically tells her, hey, you know what? The handler is the one who kidnapped you and basically put in the order to kill your parents. You know what I'm saying? And that's what actually starts to turn the tide of the fight, because she doesn't know who to believe. And so Diego and the rest of the brothers and sisters come in, and they're like, hey, you know what? We want you to calm down. You're one of us. You're not one of the handlers. You're one of us. And, Diego's really the one talking to her, because, of course, he loves her or whatnot. And, dude, you see the, gunshots come out of nowhere. So everybody but Lala's gotten shot. And you see the handler has shot everybody, which was nuts. So you see everybody fall, and it's like, is this the end? What the heck? And so, to piggyback off of what happened there, Five actually starts to listen to his dad, where he's telling him, rewind, why don't you take it increments at a time? And with that being stated, basically Five finally listens to his dad, and he basically rewinds to right before the handler is able to shoot everybody. So he takes the gun, and he basically saves everybody again. So Five definitely does that, and you see one of the three brothers actually able to come in, and I'll let y'all watch the definite end to see what happens there. But 5 does end up one way or another saving the day, and like I stated before, it was actually really good. Now, since it's a sipping review, and I know it's a season, and I know I've covered a lot, and I know I left out a lot, please comment below, subscribe, hit the bell, tell me what you like, what you didn't like. Tell me if you want me to cover another season. I love these season things. I definitely had to binge watch it over the weekend, but like I said, watch it 3 times for you guys to get the notes. My rating on this season would definitely have to be a 8.5 cups of coffee out of 10. This season was crafted so well for the premise to be exactly what the premise itself was exactly the same from season 1, but for them to develop the characters more, show you a little bit more into depth of what the characters were about, and everything that they did differently as far as showing you the little tidbits of history and all of that. Like I said, I absolutely loved it, and I even liked the backstory behind everyone else. So yeah, it was definitely worth the watch. I couldn't even pick too many things I did not like about this season. It wasn't too many things. There was a 1 or 2 slow episodes, which kind of made me be like, oh, okay, whatever. But I like the way that they kind of prioritized the characters. It wasn't too much of Vanya doing nothing. It wasn't too much of number 1 doing nothing. It definitely focused in on interesting premises, which I definitely love. So I believe the name is Steve Blackman. Keep doing your thing, man. I love this show. Please give us another one. Netflix, give us a season 3. I think most of us will definitely appreciate it. In any case, you guys, please hit the notification bell. Thank you for joining me at the coffee bar for the Sipping Review Season 2 of the Umbrella Academy. Y'all have a good one.